Being present in the moment, as long as you're unable to access the power of now, every emotional pain that you experience leaves behind it a residue of pain that lives on in you. That's from Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. Okay. Obsessions about past hurts or worries of the future prevent you from being present in the moment. Very often, it's always interesting to me, people who are teaching mindfulness, and those of you that don't know, mindfulness is a part of dialectical behavior therapy, and they don't, a very, shall I say, skillful way to be mindful is to be mindful of your thoughts and your emotions. But for many people entering mindfulness, what happens is they tune in to obsessions that they're having, and they're not being mindful at all. The most concrete, best, solid way to teach it usually is to tune into your five senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Physically feel, not emotionally feel. And to be present with that. Whenever you do that, it kind of brings you right back here, right now. If you think about it, one thing for me, a great example for me, and maybe it is for some of you, is that what will bring me right here, right now, when I'm in one of those moments where I'm obsessing and I'm thinking about all the things I've got to do and all the things that could go wrong and all that stuff, is if I get a massage. For some reason, and clearly it is the touch, but it clears my head like nothing else does. And it's about being just right there and be present with the massage as it's happening, and it starts to loosen up. The thoughts start to loosen up, and I can be right here. So being present is not about being present with the emotional turmoil. It's not about being present with all of the obsessions. It's about being in the room, hearing the sounds of the air conditioning, hearing my voice, knowing what it feels like to sit in these uncomfortable chairs for a long period, and knowing what that feels like in your body. That's what it's about to be present. And every time you've experienced joy in your life, it's because you have been very present. And helping our clients to learn how to be present gives them the prerequisite skill to being able to experience joy in their life and to get the direction in their life that they need from joy and passion. Until we learn to regulate and contain negative emotions, we cannot experience joy. All right, think of it this way. This is a simple analogy, but I think it's accurate. We all have a finite emotional capacity. Think of it as a jar. You've got a jar inside of you, and you can feel so many emotions, and it's limited, it's contained, okay? What happens with this emotional capacity is that when we start to experience a lot of negative emotions, joy and empathy begin to rise to the top and eventually spill over. They crowd out the space for joy and empathy. And I'll give you some examples that I know you can really relate to. Whenever you see someone who's in a lot of pain and really struggling, it's all about them, isn't it? And they can come in to, whether they're working with you or a treatment center, and they could care less about the other community, they could care less about anything. It is all about me. Why is that? It's because when your jar is filled with negative emotions, empathy and joy are fragile and they spill out. And that's actually true for all of us. As empathetic as all of us are in our practice, when your emotional jar is full of painful emotions, how empathetic are you really? Intellectually we might be, but I can guarantee you we're not really empathetic emotionally because that space fills. Now, when all of the events in your life become increasingly more and more painful and they trigger more and more negative emotions, what happens to joy? It's gone, yeah, and there's no space for it. So we keep experiencing these negative emotions, and our capacity keeps getting filled with them over and over again, and we can't get to the place of joy. It's almost as if it's physiologically not possible for us to get to joy because our space, our emotional space, is consumed with this strong, incredibly strong, overwhelming negative emotions. So in that context, we need to understand that it's extraordinarily important that we teach emotion regulation skills, and in particular, teach the skills that are effective in reducing and containing negative emotions. If we are going to get our clients to the place where they can hear the voice of God inside them, if you will, the still small voice, if they're able to access their passion, their joy that drives our authentic creativity, we have to help create the space for that by giving them tools to regulate the negative. Joy becomes crowded out by all the others, and eventually, for many of our folks, is not there. Hence, when we ask the question of those coming into treatment, when was the last time you experienced joy, and you say outside of your addiction, they can't come up with it, because their lives are so filled with painful emotions that there is no space for the joy to happen. All right, and finally is self-generated mastery. And self-generated mastery is about choosing to follow your own ideas, passions, and dreams. Ask yourself, am I feeling shameful because I have violated one of my values or because I fear rejection from others? Okay, so when we're working with a client and we're encouraging them to follow their own idea, whatever that idea is, that is their idea, not ours, theirs, something that comes from inside them that they want to follow, then they often will take a step toward that, and then the shame kicks in. I can't do it. It's not worth it. Others will reject me, and they start to back up then and question it. So the technique of teaching them is to first take the step on the idea, take the step, take the initiative, and then when you start to feel the shame, ask yourself, am I feeling shame because I'm violating one of my values? And if you are, you need to take a step back. But if it's shame because you feel like you'll be rejected, push through it and go ahead and do what you plan to do. Because in there is one of the emotion regulation skills that is coming to the surface in the research to be one of the most effective emotion regulation skills, which is acting opposite. So remember the action urges? When I talked about the urge for sadness is to deactivate. One of the therapies right now that's getting the most evidence behind it and is really showing very promising effects is activation therapy. I know you don't feel like getting out of bed, and you need to get out of bed if you can only do it for 15 minutes. I know you don't want to leave the house, but you need to leave the house and walk around the block. And let's do what's doable, do that, and then you keep increasing it. In any way that you can act opposite and really engage yourself in the opposite behavior, your emotions begin to change. Because I deceived you a bit in the initial model that I gave you where I said there's the event, the emotion, and then there's behavior. Well, what we now know is that model works both ways. Behavior can actually trigger emotion. And if you think about whenever you've felt distress, you felt anxiety, the day's been kind of long, and you go to the gym, what happens? You feel better. You may not feel a whole lot better, you may feel a lot better, but you feel differently. Let's just put it that way, definitely. And what did you do? It's behavior that made the difference. And if you look at some of what's coming out of acceptance and commitment therapy right now, it's really clear that behavior is what, when we act differently, is what really can make a difference. And it's one of the most powerful emotion regulation skills. So when it comes to teaching our clients how to regulate negative emotions, we really have to get to this place of saying, okay, are you feeling shame because you violated your values, or is it because you feel rejection from others? And if it's because you fear rejection from others, act opposite to it. Feel the shame and do it anyway. There was the title of a book still out, I think, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a great title because it really captures the essence of that. And there's increasingly more data to support that that's the way to do it. If the latter, then feel the shame and do it anyway. Okay, the art of mastery. When you feel that your opinion doesn't matter, express your opinion in a thoughtful way. When you feel belittled or disrespected, ask the other person to treat you respectfully. When you feel that others judge you harshly, kindly stand up for your beliefs and values without invalidating the other person's. One of the problems that many of our clients have, though, and I've tried to put it in the language here, is that because they are in so much pain and because this is sort of awkward for them, because they're not as graceful, it's like learning to walk, as many of us did. They're just learning to walk, so they're sort of awkward with it, is that when they start asserting themselves, they do it very awkwardly and they push other people away, and they set a boundary, and it gets people angry because the way they do it, And it's coming from a good place, but there's an art, a technique to learning how to do it and doing it in a way that doesn't push other people away. But when we're treating shame-based trauma, it really is learning that skill to be able to gently assert yourself without pushing someone away out of pain. Okay, what doesn't work? Cheerleading self-talk. You don't believe it even as you are telling yourself how great you are. And I won't go into it, but I would encourage you, if you have any interest in this, to look up self-validation theory. There's gaining quite a bit of support behind this, which is that if you don't believe what you're telling yourself, it doesn't have much of an effect. You can write it on the mirror all day long, and if you don't believe it, it's not going to work. And in fact, it can actually be invalidating. Today's going to be the best day of my life. I mean, it does sort of feel good to see that. But if you really don't believe it, and then the day is awful, it really starts to fall apart, right? All right. Behavior is the key to learning to self-validate. You push through the feeling and you act opposite to it. When you observe yourself acting on your own passions and dreams, it changes how you feel and think. So encouraging them, first of all, to be able to find a space for joy, regulate the negative emotions, and get to the place where they can actually act on their dreams. Validation seeking destroys relationships. This is an important aspect for us to work with our clients on, because when we're on that treadmill of seeking validation and we need to tell everyone around us how hurt the other person made us, none of us do that, do we? I remember, I never went through ESK, but I've been told that Werner Erhard, one of the things that he used to say was that when you get hurt, who's the first person that you go to about it? And it's everyone else other than the person who actually hurt you, right? But it's this idea of needing someone to validate. Anytime things have gone wrong on the job, any of you who are managers, have run a treatment center, I can tell you, everyone starts going around and talking about it with each other, right? And they need that validation of, this is not working out, this is what's going wrong, do you support my opinion? They're looking for the validation outside of themselves. It's not okay for them to feel that things were not happening well and validate that and let that be. They need to seek it from outside. And ultimately, when you do that with folks, you end up wearing them out. And some of our more wounded clients, their relationships, they're serial relationships. They have relationships, they wear them out, and they move on to someone else. And so you'll find their life goes from group of friends to group of friends to group of friends, because nobody can be there and give that much validation over time, and it wears them and breaks the relationship. Constantly fishing for praise about your perceived accomplishments, and talk at length about how frustrated, belittled, and underutilized you are. And there are many other ways in which we can seek validation, but it's an important point to really help our clients understand that when you engage in that kind of behavior, you push other people away. Nobody can be there for you that much. They often say things like, well, nobody's supporting me, or you're not there for me. And I would encourage you to really look at that statement, because oftentimes what it is they're saying they're not supporting my addiction, if you will, to validation. And it's also a sign of, I can't validate myself, therefore I have to have other people validate me. In the context of, I think it's enormously important that when we're changing our lives, that we surround ourselves with people who validate us, that we have a support system. All of those things are clearly very important, whether it's an addiction or mental health, that you have people around you, but you cannot be solely dependent on that. The objective is really learning to begin to develop the ability to self-validate.